We're sisters, best friends, and authors on a mission to help you stoke your creative fire and live the life of your dreams. We believe that purpose fuels passion and that creativity is your secret weapon for mass construction. There's never been a better time to bless the world with your dream realized. You're listening to The Kate and Abbie Show. What is up, guys? Welcome back to The Kate and Abbie Show. This is episode 9. Super excited to be here today.
Almost episode 10.
I know.
Crazy. 10 episodes
That'll
of this
be like,
show.
We'll have to celebrate when we hit 10. Today we are talking about a topic that's pretty close to our hearts because it's a big part of who we are and how we grew up, and that is homeschooling. More specifically, how to, or rather not how to, but like debunking some of the myths, the common myths of homeschooling, and also showing kind of shedding some light on how homeschooling can affect creativity and increase creativity, and also some tips for high school students learning at home right now to just have a better experience learning from home and to self-motivate, and just giving you a little bit of insight from two homeschoolers who we were homeschooled all our lives. So yeah, very excited about today's topic. It's going to be good, full of gold.
Yeah.
We have a lot to say about it, but we're going to try to, not go on and on.
Right. We discussed that this would be a really relevant topic for right now because so many people so many parents are having to homeschool their kids, and so many high school students are learning at home now.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a shock, I think, for a lot of people who have never done it before.
Right.
It's very different, for sure. So yeah, just bringing a little bit of our homeschool knowledge and also some of our memories to the table today.
Yeah, and I would like to invite you to maybe set aside everything you've heard about, or maybe some opinions you've formed about homeschooling up until this point. Feel free to liberate yourself from them for now and look at it through a new lens, because there's lots of opinions floating around out there about various types of education, and I think that it all should be approached with respect and humility and an open mind, because let's face it, we're all learning every day, we're all transforming, and if these crises that we go through together as a global community can teach us anything, it can be that things shift and transform all the time, and the more we can keep our minds open to adapting and learning as we go, the better off we'll all be.
Yeah, exactly. So, definitely it's something new, I think, for a lot of people, and something different. So there are a lot of, speaking of learning new things and trying new things, there's a lot of myths that float around the whole idea of homeschooling, and they've been floating around for so long that it's we need to debunk some of these myths. Mm-hmm. And me and Katie are both kind of living proof that a lot of these statements and these stigmas are just simply not true about homeschooling. So yeah, open your mind and grab a notebook if you want to make some notes, and let's get into it.
Yeah, and if you're a parent watching this,
suitable for parents and students.
So feel free to invite your child if you are homeschooling your child, or if you have a child, or if you have a child you like nearby, invite them to sit in on this episode and have some listening good vibes together.
Yeah, and this is not just for this time period where we are currently all learning from home and working from home and doing everything from home, but also looking towards the future of when things do eventually go back to some sense of normalcy. What are we going to decide to do going forward? Because we now have options that maybe we didn't explore earlier. So it's good to, I think, look at these options. And not that homeschooling wasn't an option before this, it's kind of always an option, at least in this part of the world, to my knowledge. But I think a lot of people don't really think about it a lot. So as an option. So yeah, this is giving us all an opportunity to kind of open our minds more to this alternate way to approach education. Okay, so let's jump right into the myths. I have a few written down, and feel free to jump in with any that come to your mind. But the biggest one that comes to my mind immediately that I hear so many people talk about, and I still get that. I still get this question from people when I tell them that I was homeschooled. They ask me about this, and it's kind of impertinent, honestly, when they ask it. But it is this myth, it's this stigma that if you homeschool your child, they will, beyond the shadow of a doubt, turn out shy and sheltered and incapable of socializing. Like, I feel like that's the biggest one that so many people latch on to. And even if they wouldn't phrase it like that, it's what they think in the back of their mind, like, oh, they need the social interaction of being with other kids. And I know from our experience that this is simply not true. It's not true that homeschooled kids turn out to be this kind of weird, strange breed of like sheltered people who don't know how to communicate with others or socialize. And honestly, I don't really have to say much to people who ask me that question anymore, because I just kind of tell them about what I do for my work. And I'm like, well, I'm a writer and I am a writing coach and I communicate with people all the time, okay? I have no problem with social interaction and I feel absolutely no reservations in that area.
And anyone who, all our friends know that, like, you'd be hard pressed to get us to shut up sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you can't get a word in edgewise.
Sometimes it's the opposite of not being social enough. We can be a little bit like, okay, simmer down.
Yeah, and this is something I'm going to circle back around to later. But I think a lot of people might not be aware that even if you do homeschool your child, you don't have to like completely disconnect them from any other kind of interaction with other kids. Like, they can still do extracurricular activities. They can still do sports at their local school. There are a lot of opportunities for homeschooled kids. Like, if you decide to do most of their education at home, they can still participate in other activities with other kids, like classes and programs of all kinds. Like, we even did that when we were growing up.
Yes, we did.
Not sports, because I'm not into sports, but
right. Well, I think that actually that leads into a great point. You can be more mindful with what sorts of activities your child might like to engage in when it's not simply just limited to the structure that the particular school will offer. Like, oh, here's what we offer, X, Y, and Z, and then you can choose from those things. Well, a lot of times those aren't very diversified.
Yeah.
They tend to be, and I'm not speaking for all schools, there's certainly lots of variety in sports and, theater and arts and things like that, for sure. But I think that it would be financially impossible for a school to really diversify to the point of, that the opportunities you have as someone out not going to a particular school, you have the pick of anything you want.
Right.
So if you're like, oh, well, I would like to introduce my child to martial arts or to yoga. These are more less commonly used, less commonly practiced things. You can actually dig into more of these mindful practices with your child and be more mindful about those activities they get involved in, rather than just like, oh, pick from these things here. Well, maybe open their mind to trying things that are more related to culture, or things that are more related to arts that are considered more fringe, things that might not be available to them within a school structure. You can now seek those things and find them and allow your child to participate in them, and then connect with other students and adults alike who are engaged in those same mindful activities. I think you can just really, I know I'm describing this a little bit broad, but you can really hone in on like, hey, I want to expose my child to like maybe a culture of a country that you hold dear or that's in your ancestry. I want them to be involved in more cultural activities, or I want them to be involved in like learning yoga or martial arts or something like that. It's like those things might not be available to them at the school just because they can't have that broad of a variety financially, and they might not have the staff to even be able to facilitate those sorts of things. But now you as the parent, homeschooling, home educating your child, you can seek and find those things, and it just makes for some interesting engagement that you can really draw on.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like we did a lot of that growing up, and that makes me think of the whole concept, which I love so much, of natural learning. So it's a little bit different from homeschooling in that it's part of homeschooling. It's like it's definitely part of it. But not all homeschoolers natural learn or embrace that idea. But the idea is basically that you give your child the freedom to explore different things, and you notice and observe what they're naturally attracted to. So whether that's just something really simple, as in like the child wants to go on a nature walk or something, and they want to go to a particular place like the forest or a mountain or something, and you kind of allow that to open up new questions and new discussions and learning opportunities. Or it could be something like you go to a music store with your kid, and whatever instruments they gravitate towards, you're like, oh, well, would you want to try playing that? Rather than being like, you will play the saxophone, like see what your child goes to naturally, whether that's like science or biology or music or arts of any kind. And just kind of let that be a conversation starter, not like, oh, you want to do that? Okay, let's like do that, like hardcore, like that.
Or
sometimes
that can become it's actually before even the child is interested.
Yeah. Right.
Which, for a period of time, I coached figure skating, and I would often see the families with their young hockey students, young as in 5-6-year-olds, showing up for hockey, and the little kids screaming ballistic, bawling their eyes out over how much they did not want to be doing this. And the parent was more of the stance of like, you will have fun. Yeah, you will enjoy hockey because we want you to enjoy hockey. So it's a little bit of the opposite of natural learning.
For sure.
Not that you should never prompt and healthily propel your child toward something, but there's certainly a line that, there should be, to an extent, allowing the child to develop an interest before something like that is forced.
Yeah, and I think that's like the big thing is like they develop the interest first, because I know we did that. Like we always loved skating. We grew up on a lake. We grew up skating all the time ever since we were little. And then we started taking lessons.
Right.
And at first, I know you were like a little bit averse to some of the lessons. Or like, I don't know if I want to do this. But continuing to do it and kind of our parents helping us to commit to that was really helpful and I think constructive. And it wasn't like a forcing, like, you will go skating. It was like they knew that we loved skating.
Right.
So they encouraged us,
exactly.
During the times when we felt like kind of down on ourselves or like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Right.
So there is definitely a marked difference there. But yeah, natural learning is something I really love the concept of. And that just reminded me of it with the different activities and extracurricular activities. That's what this can carry over into, as well as sports and just different interests and arts. All kinds of creative endeavors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the things that I have jotted down.
Yeah.
And underlined 3 times is that I found being home educated vastly increased my exposure to art, which for me is huge. I think that the world would be a better place if more students had a heightened exposure to art and art forms, be it the fine arts, music, and creative arts. So I think that we spent loads of time in museums studying the masters, painters, reading about them, discussing them, writing about them. And because of that, it really developed our sense of awareness toward art as a whole, and also the opportunities that would arise for us to make our own art and voice our own creativity. And because of that, in my adulthood, going into an art museum feels like going into this cozy little nucleus in which I just feel at home. I feel very comforted by the whole sense of entering an art museum or a gallery. It just is, I grew up there. And I know that so much aided in both of our senses of art, the way that our awareness of art, really.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it really, I think, taught us to appreciate it.
Yes.
In a different way.
Right.
And I know that, schools will orchestrate trips to museums and things like that, but it's a whole different thing. It's just a whole different feeling when you're going through an art museum with your parents, or, with even just one of your parents, and really taking your time and discussing as you go and appreciating. Just it can be a really cool bonding time, I think.
Exactly. And I think too, like, even though some students that go in a group to an art museum will enjoy it, I think most surveys would show that the majority of the class wouldn't necessarily be there of their own volition.
Right. And so then it kind of becomes like this thing I have to do. Like, I have so many people who have commented on my channel, Writer's Life Wednesdays, about the topic of writing, saying that they never loved writing or they just started to rediscover their love for writing because they didn't like it in school because they had to write. So it's like this kind of forced thing. You don't really like what you're forced to do, usually.
Exactly.
So yeah, just circling back to the first thing I said there about this stigma of home-educated children are usually sheltered and shy, and they don't know how to socialize with other people or other kids because they weren't exposed to large amounts of kids during their education, is false for all the reasons that we just talked about, but also for the simple reason that is a very obvious fact that a lot of kids who go through a traditional education and who go to regular school are not all extroverted and outgoing. So if that was the case, if it was like homeschooled kids are shy and kids who go to regular school are not, then you would see no shy kids graduating high school. It's just, it's a completely untrue statistic. It's like, it's made up. It's fake.
Right.
It's not true. Because it really has to do with personality. It is all about personality. There is no right or wrong personality. And this idea that we have to force kids to turn out a certain way. I just think that that's a really limiting mindset to have, and pretty closed-minded, and also kind of disqualifies. It's kind of like has this condescending, disqualifying tone towards people and children who have a certain personality of like, well, you have to be this way. You have to be outgoing. You have to be extroverted. You have to be talkative and social. Like,
right.
That's a preference, and that's a personality thing, and there is no right or wrong there. Like, you don't have to fit into a certain mold. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just sad, honestly.
Yeah, because there are home-educated or home-tutored students who are shy by personality, and there are also privately or publicly educated students who are shy.
Yeah.
And it is a personality trait that I believe should be respected.
Yes.
Just like all other personalities.
And they're also extroverted homeschoolers.
Right. And then I was going to say, and on the other hand, you also have some very extroverted home-educated students and some very extroverted publicly or privately educated students. So
Yeah.
It is a personality. And these personalities should all be embraced. It sounds funny even saying it because it's such a fundamental.
It seems so obvious.
It's basically the principle of tolerance.
Yeah.
Let's just embrace the fact that some people are more quiet and others are more vocal, and both are fine.
Exactly. And I think that personality, I'm such a geek about personality.
Yes.
But personality assessment, it can be such a cool gateway to self-discovery and also embracing and accepting yourself as you are and exploring who you are and, exactly as you are now, not like, oh, what teachers want me to be or what my parents want me to be. Like, to all the children who feel that they should be a certain personality or a certain way, or they should be more talkative or more social, all you have to be is exactly who you are. Mm-hmm. Like, that's it. You're supposed to be yourself.
Right. And as far as I think a lot of parents who have a hesitation about or a fear that they won't be able to aid their child in being social and having social interactions. I have seen students from all backgrounds who have struggled with being social. I have seen in my adult life many adults who have trouble being social, and they come from all backgrounds. It's really not, it does not have to do with the method through which they are educated. I would say that it has more to do with how active an interest you take in them being socialized. So if you want, if it's in if it's something you really want to make sure that your child is being exposed to social situations, then simply expose them to social situations. And there's 101 ways to do that. And a public school, private school, a school building is not like a friend factory. Yes, friendships
Amen. That's a great soundbite.
Friendships
right
can come out of an education building. Friendships can also come out of many other places. Other things like bullying and countless atrocities can also come out of an education building and also other places. So there are pros and cons. It is not a guarantee that by sending your child to an establishment for learning, that they will develop wonderful social skills and make friends and not have any negative experiences. As much research has shown in the area of bullying, which that's become such an important, relevant topic today more than ever, that it can lean in a far more negative way in many circumstances. I am not saying that that's the only experience your child can have, but I'm saying that it's not a guarantee that, oh, this will help to make my child, it will help to expose them to social interactions. Just expose them to social interactions, both with peers and adults.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Very well said. I think another one of the big misconceptions or myths around homeschooling that immediately comes to the minds of a lot of parents when they consider it is, I'm not qualified enough. I am not educated enough. I can't be a teacher. I'm not a teacher. For any parent out there who is not a teacher, you probably are feeling a little bit unqualified to teach your child and to basically replace the teacher figures that they are used to. So first of all, it's not true, but we're going to go into why. One of the biggest reasons, I think, is that, first of all, especially today, I mean, even like 10 years ago, we couldn't say this, or 20 years ago, there is so much information readily accessible for free all over the internet. I mean, that's such a given, but like you can learn
from some of the from some of the greatest experts in those particular fields that we now have access to. How mind-boggling is that?
You can become a teacher. I mean, not like a certified necessarily teacher. You don't have to go through a traditional system of education in order to educate yourself enough to educate your child to the degree that they need to be educated in whatever grade they are in, or even to just the level that is of interest to them. Like, I think a lot of times we overdo it. I think a lot of systems overdo it with the information input. But what your child is interested in, and again, going back to natural learning, going to trusted sources online, there is so much information to find and to discover yourself. And I think that's actually kind of a cool learning opportunity for parents as well, and for people who maybe you learned it in school, but you forgot all about it, so you can kind of rediscover the topic and learn more about it now as you teach your child. And it can be really, I think, a fun experience and kind of a cool bonding opportunity. And learning together can be really cool and kind of humbling in a way, but in a good way, not of like, oh, I'm ignorant and unqualified. I'm sorry, kid, but I don't know anything about this. Like, they aren't going to care. They're not going to be like, oh my God, my teacher's so much better than you, Mom. You're horrible at this. Like, they're not going to be like that. They're going to be very excited to learn with you. If you are missing information or you're not sure about something, research it together. And that can be a great opportunity to show your child how to research a thing and how to dig into something and explore it and pull it apart. And that's actually one of my favorite things to do. Like, that's my whole interest in psychology. I am really teaching myself, and I am continuing my education from home by learning about psychology and about writing. And those are the things I'm really interested in. Those are the things that really get me excited about my work. And I am fine with saying for the rest of my life, I am a student.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something you have to embrace in order to be a good teacher.
To be a good person.
To be a good person, too.
And I don't mean good as in, oh, otherwise you're a bad person.
No.
Otherwise you're you've really stagnated yourself. You've closed your own mind. And if you want to really enjoy your own existence, you really need to have a learner's mindset. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to stagnate yourself in one time, in this time period, time capsuling yourself and being unable to adapt and change.
Yeah.
And learn
so we're
and
all
grow.
Students. We're all learning.
Exactly.
Your child might be, younger than you, of course, and like doesn't know quite as much, but you're still both learning. And so I think it can be a really cool mindset shift to just think, we're both students and we're both learning together. So if there's anything that you don't know, we can learn it together.
Right. And also, I think it's worth noting that you're not entirely on your own with homeschooling. It's not like, oh, have at it, go figure it out yourself. Maybe you can scrape up some books and teach your kid to read them. There are curriculums that exist, okay? Yeah. You can use a curriculum, and that's what Abby and I were educated through growing up, was through curriculums through each grade. And then we underwent state testing at the end of each school year.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that's like this complete hands-off free-for-all. I think some people, they think of homeschooling and they see it as this free-for-all where kids are hanging out on the couch, watching TV all day, eating Doritos. And that's what, today we're learning about whatever TV show we're watching. There is a curriculum that you follow.
Today we're learning about the artificial colors in Doritos by eating them.
Depending on what country or state you live in, you would have to look up the specific laws for homeschooling. Is going to be different depending on your geographical location, but it is not a free-for-all. I can tell you that in many places there are standards that you have to uphold there. So you have to be teaching your children, fundamental things, and they will be tested on those things, or at least undergo an evaluation. It's going to be different per place, but it is a structure that exists. So you're not entirely on your own. There are already programs in place to help you to accomplish this task of educating your child in a home setting.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a big part of it. And another thing that just came to my mind when you were talking about that is another cool thing about homeschooling is that it's not a free for all, but there is more freedom. Mm-hmm. So the thing I always remember taking advantage of with homeschooling is that, you have a certain amount of schoolwork that you have to do each day, whether you take a curriculum, like a particular book, whatever. Divide the pages by the amount of weeks that you're doing in your school year, and there you go. You have the number of pages you have to read or accomplish every day. It's very straightforward. But the cool thing there is it's not like, okay, well, between this time and this time, we have different periods and, different structure, the same structure to our day every single day. You can change up the structure however you want. Your child can change up the structure however they want. So if it's, you have to do this amount of school every day, I remember days, lots of days, and I think you did the same thing too, where we decided, we want to do this cool thing later, we want to go to a museum later, we want to do something later in the day. We can get our schoolwork done early. We can cram our schoolwork in the beginning of the day or the morning and then have more freedom for the rest of the day. Or move particular subjects to the time of day that you want to do them. For instance, reading comprehension. I remember doing a lot in the afternoon because we would all read together and take turns reading, and we would visit the library. And that was just so cool to be able to have the freedom to decide not how much you're going to do, but when you're going to do it, and structure your day how you want to on your own terms, and still accomplish the same thing, still learn the same thing, but give yourself more space to move around in and more freedom to explore new topics or explore art, like you were saying, different cultures. And I think that's something that is, I think, very liberating, and a lot of traditional education institutions don't really allow that. Most of them don't have the freedom to expand and branch out and move around within your education with learning the same things, but almost in a more conducive way because you're more receptive to them.
Right. It's more altogether holistic.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think this would be a good place to interject based off what you were saying, that homeschooling really gave us a lot more freedom to be able to write.
Yes.
And that was so much part of what inspired us to become writers. Because writing was never forced upon us as something that we had to do or else. It was so, of course there were assignments that we had to do, but it was introduced to us in such a conducive unfolding that we were like, oh, of course we want to spend time writing because we actually enjoy it. It was something that we really latched onto, and because we had freedom to explore it and be like, hey, Mom, we want to spend a couple hours writing or reading. And rather than it being like, oh, well, you can only do that when you're working on assignment XYZ or when we're reading this, it's like we had this, okay, yeah, we can move the schedule around so that you can have that time to explore this art.
Yeah, I think we did a lot of writing in the mornings.
Yes.
From what I remember. And that's another thing. That's traditionally you'd have to get up and hurry up and go to school and spend your morning. And a lot of times I noticed that with us, the morning is this really very sacred, creative time of day.
Yes.
Where it's it's a new day, you're inspired, and that's a cool moment to capture and to explore what would make me feel alive right now? What would be something that I could create? It's just a very creative time of day, I think. And then you can still get to your schoolwork later.
Right.
There's no, it's not constricted at all.
Yeah, it's far less constricted, which is really, it's just a very conducive way to learn. And it worked so well for us to be able to do that. And I think that's so much what helped us to, not even helped, allowed us to fall in love with writing and with art. Like you have, I think you would kind of use the same wording here to describe how you got into music.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and music is another thing that I felt naturally drawn to and wanted to learn more about. And so I took piano lessons for a few years, and then I decided to kind of improv, which is my musical style now. But I learned a lot, and it became a cool artistic outlet for me. And it's all part of your education, really. And another thing that just came to me is the structure thing made me think of, I know a lot of people compare the structure, the time constraints and structure of school to that of a traditional job. And a lot of times we think of school as like preparing you to enter the workforce one day. But I think that this non-traditional home education idea opens up new opportunities of the way that we think about work. And with the internet now, there are so many more opportunities for entrepreneurs and for different types of work. You don't have to do a particular job that you don't like, and that is just, I'm not going to get off on a tangent like this for very long, but I'm an entrepreneur and I can't help but be getting excited about being an entrepreneur and encouraging other kids to do the same, and giving your child the freedom to decide when they're going to do their schoolwork, the things they have to do, because we do all have to work. We have to work. Not saying that your child can just do whatever it wants whenever it feels like it and then grow up to not be at all disciplined. I think discipline is an incredibly useful skill to have. It is necessary to have. But having the freedom to decide on my own terms, how would I like to live my life? Putting my creativity first and still working and still doing the hard thing and still disciplining myself to do my schoolwork, but deciding when that fits into my day. And maybe it will be at night, but that's okay, because if your child grows up and decides they want to do something different, they want to be an entrepreneur, they want to start their own business, they're going to be working nights. They're going to be working all night sometimes, and they're going to discover this love for this work that they love to do. And that, I think, just opens up a lot more opportunities for looking at work differently, looking at our careers and our lives differently, and just being more open-minded. And
I think, too, like this, right, absolutely. This pandemic has forced us to have to look at these things.
Yeah.
And it's forced us to see that, some people perhaps who have always wanted to explore entrepreneurship but haven't because they've never viewed it as a viable option are now being forced to see that, whoa, well, going to work at a place necessarily isn't set in stone reliable either. So it's, out of tragedy can come renewed insight. Yeah. And I think that's what is causing so many people to see, like, well, we have to look at these other avenues because they are viable. There is not just one path. There are many paths, whether it be entrepreneurship or home education or anything else in those categories. We have to look at these things because we cannot afford not to embrace these innovations and embrace these ways of living that perhaps have been mystified in the past. We need to demystify them and embrace these differences, and so that we can use them as valuable tools going forward as we continue to evolve globally. Everything is moving so fast that we can't afford to stand still with these things.
Yeah, for sure. I think this whole working from home thing is just made it more popular. It's made it more common, and it's it's going to be interesting to see how the future is going forward.
Yeah, it's already
tremendous
changed
so much.
How much it has changed just within the past couple of months. It's really quite mind-boggling.
Which actually is a great lead-in to the next thing I had written down, which is the concept of self-motivation. And this is especially geared towards older students, students who are in high school and you're at home learning now. You probably are studying an online curriculum, and it's probably, or your curriculum from your school. I know a lot of schools are now going online, and you have particular things that you have to do every day, of course. But I've noticed that among my friends who are still in high school, and even my friends in college, are noticing this. It's tricky to self-motivate. That's like the thing that I keep seeing like online and on Instagram and stuff, is like self-motivating is kind of this tricky and different concept from just the usual routine of getting up and going to school and sitting in class, and now you're here. You showed up, and now you're going to learn. However, the showing up part is really the hardest part, and it's the hardest part in a lot of things, whether it's, learning something new or working out, doing something that requires self-discipline and requires motivation. It's hard to show up sometimes, and I completely understand that feeling of just you don't feel like doing it, and you need somebody kind of pushing you to do it, whether it's your schedule or my teacher is going to be in that room, I need to pass this class, I need to whatever, and you show up because of that. But what motivates you to show up when you don't have that person telling you have to be here at this time, and you're just unused to the concept of having all this freedom? Sometimes the freedom can feel like chaotic because you're used to having this structure. And I'm a very structured person myself. My personality, I need to have structure and calendar block my day and have all my lists. So I understand and relate to that feeling.
Abby always says calendar blocking in a very reverent tone.
I feel like I say calendar blocking like everybody knows what it is, but I don't know if everybody knows what it is.
Calendar blocking.
Calendar blocking. My favorite thing. But I love it so much, and I would definitely recommend it to every student out there who feels like just my schedule's gotten all messed up because I'm learning from home now and I'm doing these online classes and it's just weird and different and you're not used to it. Highly recommend calendar blocking to structure your day if you're missing that structure. Now, some people might not be missing the structure. Some students might be like, are you kidding? I love this. But it really is, again, it's a personality thing. So if you find that you're like, oh, I'm really missing the structure, use methods like calendar blocking, use apps to help you track your time, and get organized and make lists and just explore different ways that you can use the structure routine that you're used to create your own routine on your own terms, and you'll probably end up liking it even more than the way that you were used to doing it at school.
Right. And I would also highly recommend Simon Sinek's TED Talk about finding your why. Because if you can identify why you're doing a given thing, it's a very important question to ask. Don't be scared of the question. Ask yourself why and really probe deep into why am I learning this? Why am I doing this? I don't care what your age is, what grade you're in, or if you're even in school anymore. It can be applied to anything in life. Why am I doing this? Okay, I am learning this thing so that I am capable of chasing my dreams and being able to rise to any occasion. Wow. Well, that's a motivating concept. Yeah. That's very motivating. What is not motivating is I don't care about any of it. It won't help me at all. I don't plan on using it at all. Which most things that you're learning, you will find that the answer is going to be to the positive.
Yeah.
For many things. Now, of course, there are times when you might find a negative answer. If you're an older student, perhaps trying to sift through maybe what you want to do for work or a career, you might come to a dead end where it's like, no, there's really no why. Then you need to there's no positive why, rather, then you need to maybe brainstorm it a little bit. But for so many of you, especially younger students, all the things you're doing, all the things you're learning, it's to a greater purpose that will benefit you, that will help you to chase your dreams and to live your passions and be this vibrant human being. And if you can identify and even write down those things, this is why I'm actually doing it, it will help to motivate you and pull you through momentary frustrations for a long-term benefit, a long-term goal.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And another thing that just came to me when you're saying that is like the reconnecting with your reason why you're doing it, why it particularly matters to you. I think is especially, I think it will just hit you in a different way when you're all alone in your home or in your room studying this thing and working really hard at learning this thing. It's a different dynamic when you're in a classroom or you're in a group setting, because you kind of have this instinctual response takes over of like, I'm doing this with everybody else in my class. We're all learning that we're all doing this together. And whether you consciously think this or not, your brain subconsciously is like, I'm doing this because everyone else is doing it. Whereas that's not the real reason why you're doing it, of course. You're doing it for yourself and because you're interested in it. But you're also doing it in a group setting, which is a totally different dynamic than you being alone doing this thing. And now you have to really connect with, why am I doing it for me? Why does it matter to me? And that can be just a really cool discovery, I think, to connect with and to really rediscover your passion and your desire to go forward and learn this thing and to work really hard at it. It's not just because your professor wants you to get good grades. It's not just because your parents want you to get good grades. It's not because your friends are doing it or your dorm room mates are doing it or everybody else in the classroom is doing it. You're doing it because you want to learn this thing, because you want to pursue this career. So I think being alone and motivating yourself to study and disciplining yourself to study can help you to reconnect with that love and that desire and that passion and your reason why.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like circling back to, if I could say one thing to parents about home educating your child, it would be that for me, home education taught me and fostered in me a burning desire and passion for learning rather than an obligation to learn because I had to.
Yes, same.
It was a passion. It was a joy to learn. It was something that it wasn't just presented to me without an explanation for why it needed to happen. Like, oh, we need to learn this because we need to learn this. All of the subjects had meaning, and the reasons why behind each were a holistic discussion first, which then fostered a desire to learn them because I wanted to, because I saw the value, because I respected it.
Yeah, 100%. Same here. And to this day, it is still a joy to learn. And it's something I'm very attracted to whenever I have the opportunity to learn something, especially something that I'm interested in or that I'm writing about, or something that pertains to writing, of course, and psychology, like I mentioned before. And homeschooling really, really did foster that in me as well, and gave more space to be creative and to discover my passions and what I love and my unique voice and what I have to give the world. And I think everybody should be given the freedom to explore that and discover that for themselves. Every child should be given the opportunity to discover what they love and what sets them on fire, what it sparks joy in their soul, and what they have to give the world. What good, beautiful thing can they give the world that only they can give the world? So it's very important. And I agree. I would definitely tell parents the same thing. And also, don't feel unqualified or like you're not smart enough to teach your child. That is simply not true. It is a limiting belief. Crush it, get rid of it, throw it out the window and where it belongs. And
and know you're not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone.
You have some of the leading experts in this stuff online that are available. Look at Khan Academy.
Yes.
Look at some of these incredible online academies that exist to help you do just this
for free. It's so cool.
We're not living in 1901 here. You know, exactly. We have limitless tools in our belts now. So
yeah. And speaking of sources, I did want to mention Khan Academy, so thanks for bringing that up. That's a great resource. Definitely check it out if you don't know about it already. I think a lot of people probably know about it, but some people have never heard of it. So Khan Academy, I think it's Khan.
Isn't it Kahn?
I don't know, Kahn. I get it mixed up, but Google it, you'll find it. Another thing I would recommend is if you want to read some really great books about homeschooling. John Holt is an excellent author who basically was one of the pioneers of home education and the whole topic and bringing it more into the mainstream and destigmatizing homeschooling. So his books are great. Definitely check out some books by John Holt if you're a parent or even an older student just wanting to learn more about homeschooling. Very good stuff. There are all kinds of online resources as well that you can find different communities online and connect and share and explore. And also just remind yourself that we're all in this together and you're definitely not alone. I think the community aspect of it is definitely important. And find different programs and things that you can participate in with your child and bring your child to different experiences and give them you can give them so many opportunities. There's so many opportunities. Can't even go into all of them, but there's so much to learn and figure out and explore. And it could be really fun if you let it be. So let it be fun. Let it be an explorative process. And if you're an older student learning from home in high school or college, just keep motivating yourself. Remember your reason why. Write it on a piece of paper and put it where you can see it on your desk or on your computer background or your phone background or something. And just always remind yourself why this matters to you. Just like I talk about with writing on the channel, you have to remember why it matters to you because that is what's going to see you through the hard days and the times that you don't want to show up and you don't want to do it. So show up for yourself. Do it because you're passionate about it. You love it. And that's all I got.
Yeah. I think we said a lot. Yeah. This is a pretty loaded podcast. So sure. I hope you took some goods away and wrote some stuff down. And I think just embrace the fact that we live in an ever-evolving, ever-changing world and climate. And embrace these innovations, embrace these new different things. And I think there are so many other cultures too that have already embraced more of this holistic learning method that we can learn a lot from. And we have the opportunity to do that. Whatever your reason is right now, whether it's because of the pandemic or because you've decided to just try this path, embrace it and enjoy the journey. There, like Abby said, you're not alone. We are here with you, and there are so many other people here with you, and power to that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been a good, pretty loaded episode. Hope you enjoyed listening to us explore this topic a bit more from a very, very personal perspective, because we've been there, done that, and we have only good things to say about home education, so can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, send us a message or check out the YouTube video version of this podcast so you can see our faces as we babble on and on about this topic. And leave a comment below letting us know if you're a parent home educating your child or if you're a student who's now learning from a home setting. Tell us what your experience has been, and let's kind of show up for each other and just share our experiences and let other viewers and listeners know that, hey, I'm not alone in this, we're all here in this together. And if you have questions, why don't you leave those below too? If there's something we didn't cover, that you're like, oh, well, hey, I had this question, leave it below, because this certainly won't be the only episode we do on this topic. And so we would love to hear your feedback. We would love to hear your questions. So please have at it in the comments on the YouTube video.
And if you want to support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show. And there are different tier options available that you can show your support and your love for the show. Plus, you can participate in what we talk about, as in sending us show requests and topics that you'd like to see us cover here in this lovely studio at this great table.
At this great table.
So yeah,
go to the table of discussion. You can bring your topic to the table of discussion.
Bring your requests, and we might even do a topic exactly on what you want to hear us talk about and discuss. So there are other things also available on the Patreon if you want to show your support. Go to patreon.com/The Kate and Abbie Show. I almost said my own. My own is /Abby Emmons if you want to do that. I'm not stopping you. And Katie's is /KA Emmons, right?
Yeah.
So go check all of them out. We have great stuff to offer you guys, and we love to connect with our listeners and our viewers. So yeah, that's that. And if Patreon's not something that you want to do right now, hey, we totally get it, and we so appreciate you watching this and listening to it, and that's like the best way you can support the show. Also, to share it with a friend.
Yeah, share it with a friend. Especially during this time, like if you know like a frazzled mom or dad or whatever, who might need a little bit of like decompression of stress, send them this episode. It might be something that helps them out.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's a huge way to support is sharing.
But that's it for us, guys. We will talk to you next week. Until then, thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. Stay stoked.
And rock on.